I ended up getting a set of the Woodcraft clip-ons for the R7 here. I think that everything I've got so far from Woodcraft has actually been really good. In fact, a lot of the like kind of smaller things that I thought I was just kind of saving money with, I actually really enjoy, because now that I've put some a little bit different parts on the new RS660 Trofeo race bike, I kind of like just different components. I've really started to kind of appreciate what I've kind of got with some of the Woodcraft stuff. So I ended up going with them for the clip-ons. We're gonna get these things on there today. The main difference I think we're going to encounter is gonna be some torque specs, but I will kind of help you guys through that and we will get this thing set up. So let's get started. The first thing we're gonna start with is we're gonna remove this bar end here. We're gonna loosen these two Phillips on here and we're gonna take off our clutch. This is a 5mm hex key and they are on there usually pretty tight. So there is our bar end off. To get off this cluster here, we have two Phillips. Take it off all the way. So we can separate these two. Like I said, nothing in here falls apart. It is only 1/8mm here, which is gonna loosen this up just enough for it to slide off of our bar. Get this guy loosened up here. There'd be no reason to completely remove the bolt. Once we remove the clip-on from the top here, we'll just slide the clip-on right off of all of this. Easiest way to do this is a little gun like this, obviously connected to an air compressor, and you should be able to peel up and work this nozzle around, which is going to help basically break all glue or anything that's in here and allow you to slide it right off. And there's our grip off. All right, same thing on this side, 5mm hex key to remove this bar end here. There we go. Now for the throttle, we have two 3mm up top here to loosen up. Now I'm not gonna take these off because if you've ever taken apart a throttle tube, which you probably have if you watched my video on how to replace the short throw throttle that I installed on here from Motion Pro, you would know that they can be somewhat annoying to put back together. So to make it easier, we're just gonna have this nice and loose so that this whole component will just be able to slide off for us versus having to take this thing completely apart again. So you have to loosen it quite a bit, and mainly because there is a little hole on the bottom here that this throttle tube goes into. It has a little protruding edge that goes inside of the bar here to keep it from rotating around. And we will have to drill those into the new bars. So this is good enough right here. We can take this off as is. Now under here we have two Phillips that need to be removed, and once again we don't need to take this side all the way out. We will just slide it off. It's a little difficult to find and see these, but there we go. There's one, and here's the other one. All right, and once they're loosened enough, you can somewhat separate it enough to get it to come off of this little dimple here as well. And that'll be another thing we'll have to drill into our new bars. Last thing to do on this side is we have two 5mm hex keys that are keeping our brakes on. So we'll loosen these up. You can see they already rotate pretty easily. And this is ready to come off as well. Now, we're not gonna take any of this off yet. We are gonna wait until we get this top triple tree off of the motorcycle, and then we will take these clip-ons, slide them off, and then we can take everything off and sliding in the components back into the new bar. Next item to go for is gonna be this 27mm nut here holding our top triple tree. We are going for this one first, mainly because we're gonna want some leverage, and being able to use the bar and not having any of this loosened up is gonna help us. So we'll put her on here. Oh, that is nice and firm. There we go. So there is that top piece, a washer, and one more washer, if we can get it off. There we go. All right, next piece of triple tree removal, or at least the top clamp here, is gonna be a 6mm. We just need to loosen it up. We don't need to take it out. And then over on this side, the same exact thing, 6mm. We're just gonna loosen it up. Now in here, on the top of the triple tree, we have these little plastic covers. And I'm using a pick here just to get under it and pop it off there. So this little guy we need to get off. We'll get this one off as well. Be careful with the pick so you're not scratching up the side like I have in the past. Now these two are back to a 5mm, and these bolts go all the way through this top triple tree and they actually go into the clip-on itself to make sure that it's perfectly centered so that you don't have to worry about if they are out of alignment, basically. So we'll take that out, and here's the second one. And from here, as long as we loosened it up enough, we should be able to pry like that, just enough here to get this top triple to come off of our forks. So now that that top triple is off, the last thing holding these clip-ons onto our forks themselves is going to be this 6mm hex key here. So we'll go ahead and get that guy loosened up here. That's on there pretty good. Whew, that's on there a lot harder than I figured it would be. But there we go. We have our clip-on nice and loosened up, so we can run it up and off there. And then because this guy is nice and loose for us, we can go ahead and just remove our clip-on. Same thing on this side. We have this 6mm hex bolt to loosen up here. There we go. That should make our clip-on nice and loose. And we can slide off the clip-on and slide everything right on out. Alright guys, now that we got the clip-ons off, the thing that I like to do next is to take one of the clip-ons and we'll match up, not with this end, because this end is just a piece of plastic that you could pull out of here and put in bar ends if you'd like. I like to just leave them on unless it's the right hand clip-on, because what I'll end up doing is putting some kind of guard on here. If you're racing, you have to have them. So I'll match up the complete edge of the bar, not the plastic end piece, and then basically use the same exact spot that the stock clip-on needs the hole drilled. So I like to use something like this, which is a little punch. They're cheap, but you can see by using something like this, you can see I found the spot that I want, and what that does is ping this metal and put a nice little dimple in there. And why that's cool, and you can see the more you do it, the deeper that little hole is going to get. But what's cool about doing this is now my drill bit's not going to want to walk all over the place, right? So there's one hole, and on this side we have another one. So we know that they are they're not quite exactly off. So I will do one at a time. We'll get this one drilled first, and then we'll try and roll around and get the measurement for the other side. But you can tell we at least need a hole, and that's for that little pin within the start-stop switch to keep it from rotating around. Now this drill bit is maybe slightly bigger than this one, but not by much. So here's our drill bit. This one fits in that hole. It's a little small, or a little too big for this one, but not by a ton. And same with this one. I'm gonna go with this bit for all the holes. So we already have our little spot right here, and you should be able to really see it now, because the drill bit already took some of the paint off just by moving it around. So there's our first hole. Just go slow. This is aluminum, and make sure it's straight up and down, and make sure you're not moving around. There we go. I'm just gonna clean it up a little bit so there's no little burrs. Try and get this shit away from the toolbox. Especially steel, maybe not so much aluminum, but these little chunks, if they get into the paint of a toolbox or a motorcycle or a car, those little metal pieces will definitely help create some rust for you. So there we go, there's our first hole done. So with the clip-on basically flat, it's almost facing straight down. So I'll line this bad boy back up again, and it is just slightly off center here. My punch is needing to be reset, but there's the mark. It happens with these punches sometimes too, especially the cheapo Harbor Freights. They don't want to fire on occasion. Gotta figure out what's keeping them from not doing their job. Sometimes just taking them apart and putting them back together helps, but probably wouldn't hurt to lube or grease any of this shiz too. Had this thing forever. There we go. And now technically this one doesn't have to be all the way through. You can tell it's just realistically, if it needs to be that deep, it's going all the way through this aluminum, so it is what it is. There we go. We're all the way through. Make sure there's no burrs on there. It's just aluminum, so stuff comes off pretty easy. So there is our right clip-on complete. Got our holes in it. Our left clip-on only has one hole to drill, so same kind of process, line it up. There's our first little ping there. There we go, that should be enough. All right, there's nothing too sharp on there. All right, holes are complete, and pretty much here is the one hole is for our left, the two holes is for our right. All right, so back to the motorcycle here. It's time to put these clamps on. You can see that these are angled. We want them angled down. And on this clamp, you have a long side and you have a short side. This longer side of this clamp is gonna go that way, and this is gonna go that way. So it should fit on there just like that. Get the bolts for it. All right, we're just gonna loosely put all of this on right now so that we can get everything situated. Just kind of put one on each side. All right, we got 2 more bolts to put in there. And technically, I guess we could have just put the triple tree back on the bike, because this could all be done without the removal of the triple tree. The only reason to take the top triple off is to simply get the stock grips off. And what makes these kinds of things so cool is if you crash at the track, damage any of this, it's easy to take it apart and put another one back on if you have spare parts. Pretty rad. So there's one. I'll go ahead and put this side on as well. Try and get everything set up before we put the top triple back on. Sometimes it's a pain in the ass to get at some of these bolts once the top is on, but very doable. This is just allowing me a little more room to put these on. And I'm not gonna be putting Loctite on these. This is all aluminum. I don't think it's necessary. Once you get a good torque on aluminum, it does kind of bite pretty easy, hard, and should be okay. So there's that one. We'll get the top triple back in place here. Sometimes just needs a little love. All right, and because we haven't moved our top triple tree really from the last time, I basically have this little micrometer thing. I think it's a micrometer. I don't remember what the hell you call it. Harbor Freight, cheap as hell. Basically, you want to make sure that they're at the same height. I'm getting 10 mil on both sides. So there we go. They're both the same height. I haven't manipulated in anything. I haven't removed the lower triple clamps, so there's no reason for these forks to have moved. As long as they're even like that, they should be good to go and put back basically the same as they came off. We'll put our 2 washers back on and that top bolt, and we're gonna torque that now before I forget. 81 foot-pounds and a 27 millimeter socket. Might have to get a little inventive with holding the triple tree. Not a light amount of force here. Well, looks like we're gonna have to go lock to lock. There we go. There's our 81 foot-pounds. Torque these upper top triple tree bolts, and they are a 19 millimeter, which isn't much. There we go. So there's one, and hit the other one. Right. We stick this bolt in here, which is the pinch bolt for the bar itself. We'll make sure that this throttle cable is above the brakes. Take our rod, run it through our on-off switch, run it through our brakes, and run it inside the clamp itself. Oh, looks like I found the one for this. So the start-stop switch, it fell into its hole. So I'll tighten it down, because there's no reason for this to move anymore. And remember, this is a plastic. It's all plastic, don't overdo it. Just enough to hold it in there. So you can see our other hole is right here, and that needs to be down. So we can run this up until it binds in that hole itself. There we go. So it's the little dimple inside the throttle has now gone in. So we found its spot. We have the 3 millimeter hex bolts on the throttle itself to tighten down. There we go. Now we have our throttle, brake, and everything on here. And like I said, I am going to, for now, leave all of this loose like this and go ahead and go do the other side, because I want to be able to manipulate this setup however I want. So I'll have the ability now to figure out how much lower do I want this, how much lower can I have it basically, without having to start replacing things or bending or moving or loosening and moving my brake reservoir over a little bit. So there's lots of options here on what we can do, but it's going to take a lot of messing around with to get exactly what we want as well. So there we go. There is our right side is on. We'll hold off on the grip until we get the other side on and we start measuring and getting our grips exactly where we want. So let's go to the other side. All right, moving back to this side, we did, if you remember, take this thing apart. So we have those 2 screws in there, and this guy is just slightly loose there. So go ahead and run this guy through or leave it off, either one. Grab this, stick this in, and then we'll go ahead and put our last bolt that came with the kit here in there. So there we go, so we don't forget about it. snugs it up just a tiny bit. Our controls on there. And something I hadn't done yet either is to tighten. We hadn't tightened the 4 bolts around the clamp evenly yet, so I'll go ahead and run those down now. And remember that gap just needs to be the same on all 4 of these, right? So this one here is a little bit tighter. The one on the bottom here is a little bit tighter than the one on the top. So I'll have to come back to all that. So there we go. This guy back on. And remember we've got this hole right here. And this hole goes into this little piece inside here. You can see there's a little protruding edge right there. So we'll spin that around, put that inside that piece. Now you can see this component won't move around anymore. Just perfect, it's what we want. And then we need to put those 2 screws back in. So let me go get those. We have these 2 Phillips. Refine my hole again. Ha! There we go. Got our 2 little Phillips screws in there. 1, and there's 2. Get it. Don't over torque these or don't over tighten these. Just get them on there snug. There we go. Nice. And we have plenty of room and mobility for these controls and length. And like I said, we could always go down. Freaking gonna be awesome. So technically, we have everything installed. We have everything put back on. Now the next part is just purely adjustments. And this can be somewhat tedious as well as somewhat very personal. I'll go ahead and do what I can to set mine up. I'll show you guys how I do it. And we can then torque everything down. And of course, all this is aluminum, so the torque specs are not gonna be the same. All right guys, as I go through this process, I'm basically just trying to come up with a base standard, or setting that is. And what I've gone with is, if you don't have one of these, are definitely useful to have. And it's basically just like some kind of little caliper. I'll link one down in the description. It helps with like chain adjustments. It helps with stuff like this, making sure everything is even. But what I'm gonna do for here is basically utilize this to get me at exactly 10 millimeters. So I'm gonna do a 10 millimeter gap in between the top triple and the clip-on so that I can get a little bit lower. I'm gonna do that on both sides here. I'm also going to center this bar end how I want it, and this little piece at the end here, how you see that you have this little protruding metal piece here in the caliper. I'm gonna stick that on the side, and then I'm gonna move this caliper in, or I'm gonna move it until I get my 10 millimeter, which is exactly right there, out of this, and I'm gonna tighten this down. And of course, make sure your cluster here is how you want it, right? You're gonna have to sit on the bike to figure out like, where you want this cluster to be at with your left hand here. Do you wanna make the horn easier to get to, or make it harder to get to, but make your turn signals easier to get to? All that is up to you, your option there on how you wanna do it. Get it set up, tighten it down how you want it at that 10 millimeter, and that'll be our starting point. Because all of this is going to change considerably depending on how you like the motorcycle versus how I like the motorcycle. Are you racing the bike? Do you want it to be more comfortable on the street? All of this is very specific to the rider themselves. And of course, there are no torque specs for any of this, but what you do need to keep in mind is it's aluminum. So you don't want to overdo it. There's absolutely no reason to. That aluminum's going to bend and hold tight. So there is our first bar end on and complete. I'll get to the other side. On this side here, I got my 10 millimeters on the back here, just like we did on the other side. But now we have to get 2 more measurements. Because we already have this bar at the right angle that we want, we have to get this thing at the correct angle, which is identical to that one, and still get our 10 millimeters out of this part right here. So I know this is definitely complicated, and it's actually quite annoying to even try and record, but you just have to be patient and finagle. There's about my 10 millimeters right there. So I'm just gonna tighten it just enough to where it's not gonna move on me. There we go, so it's grabbing just enough. And of course, we'll re-verify every measurement afterwards. Now what I found is cool about these Woodcrafts is they have these little, so what's cool is the Woodcrafts have these little tiny hash marks that we could use for measuring, which is pretty badass. Now what I've noticed is right here on the front of this triple tree, there's a little gap in between where the bolt actually holds this onto this side, which basically helps clamp onto the fork. But this is a perfect little area that we can measure. Now it's definitely hard to see in there and hard to show you guys, but those hash marks that are on the side, on all the sides of which is gonna make it identical on both sides. So we could utilize those little hash marks, or in this instance, there's a W on both sides from the actual Woodcraft logo that's on here. So we could utilize that to match up perfectly straight lines to match up exactly where we want these clip-ons. Like this one, I specifically have the edge of the W dead on that line, at least this line of this top triple tree. So that's gonna get us really close to the exact same. Of course, that's as good as we're gonna do, I think, without having one of those tools that basically sit on top and help you perfectly measure these out. So now that I've got those close, I can check my gap again just to see if I'm still at my 10 millimeters, because I did lock it down, but definitely not perfect. So there's my 10 mil. This one's a little bit lower now. So I just gotta bring her down just a hair. Oh, I had to bring it up a hair. So there we go, bring it back up. That's dead on 10 mil. I'm almost perfect. There's that little adjustment to make it dead on with that line there. Verify my 10 mil one more time. I am there. And now I'm just gonna get it a little bit tighter. Now remember, when you start messing with these two bolts basically clamping in one force, it's trying to get the exact force down in both locations. So hopefully you've done a good job of lining these up in the back before you got to the point where you were tightening these, which is what I did on both sides just to make sure. And now I'm gonna slowly tighten these things one at a time, just looking to make sure that they keep and remain the exact same gap. Now, like I said, for most of this, there is no torque spec, but once again, it is all aluminum. It's very easy to bend and strip out. You don't need to worry about over tightening these things. It doesn't take that much pressure, because if you think the stock one is 17 foot-pounds, that's not a lot of force. And if you put 17 on these, you'll probably ruin them. So definitely less. I'm sure there's some guide out there. Well, I know you could do the math and figure out if it's this size bolt and it's aluminum, it needs to be a certain torque spec. But however, I don't know how you'd figure out how much you would want to clamp on a fork tube, just simply because you over squeeze a fork tube and then you're going to make the fork not function properly. So that's pretty much how we got this set up. Last few steps I need to do, remeasure everything to make sure everything worked out, set up my brake how I want my brake set up. And something very important to note when we get on the bike and we actually start messing around is that when you start finding where you want your levers, you have to be careful whether or not they're going to hit any of your fairings. Now for you, if you don't have the Olin steering damper like I do, you'll have considerably more turn in the motorcycle steering wheel. The Olin steering damper comes with a small spacer that fits on your steering stops, and it drastically reduces how far you can actually turn your wheel. So that's something, if you don't have that steering stop, and depending on what you're doing, if you're looking into the racing kind of thing, there are a lot of race series that don't allow you to not have that steering stop. I believe that steering stop helps considerably when it comes to death wobble and stuff like that. It won't let it get as aggressive. And of course the steering damper slows that down as well. So it can only turn so far, and it has the reduction in jolting forces from the steering damper that helps considerably with that kind of stuff. I'll get mine set up, finished, get these all tightened on, and then we'll go through installing the grips and safety wiring the grips, and why I believe safety wire is smart for on and off track. Right now onto my favorite upgrade so far, which has been these Domino grips. I know people are probably like, why are these so good? It's hard to say, man. Until you've actually used them and felt them, you're just missing out, guys. Alright guys, finally down to the last step here, which we're going to go ahead and put this grip on. I'll show you guys how to get a grip on real quick. I am out of grip glue, which I don't necessarily, like the grip glue that much, but ultimately what it does do is help slide them on before it dries. So instead of using that, I'm going to just use soap and water. This was pretty much empty, so I just filled it up, so it's got a little bit left in it. So we're going to try soap and water, see if this helps get it through for us. because sometimes these are a serious pain in the ass if you've never done them before. But we'll go ahead and get this side on, and then I will show you guys how I like to do the tie wire on there to hold them on and not really worry about grip glue, because for me these just end up spinning even with grip glue. So just as before, air compressor, we've got a little bit of our soapy water on there, and I'm just gonna start off by trying to get it on as far as I can, like so. Which is about as far as I could get it by hand right here. And I'm gonna see if we can get some air in here to help us a little bit. Kind of move this on a little bit. All right, put the bike on the kickstand so I can get maybe a little more leverage on it. And there we go. Got it on there. Make sure it's not grabbing anywhere. Try and right it up as far as we can, mainly because the potential of the grip not hitting, not going all the way onto the actual throttle tube and partially kind of hanging off of it, because we don't want that. We don't want it to be able to grab anywhere, and we want it to be able to snap back just like that. So there we go, there's success. I'll go ahead and put the tie wire on for you guys, show you guys how to do that, and then we'll call it. All right, last thing to do is to add some tie wire to it, just to basically keep the, as it gets hot and sweaty, and if the glue's not working, you'll end up twisting the throttle, and it's really annoying. You'll see a domino all sideways or whatever. It's really annoying to me when they move, especially when you're talking about throttle and you're all the way on throttle and your throttle tube is actually sliding, or the grip is sliding on the throttle tube. This is definitely not fun. So this is the only way I know to prevent that. I want about that much tie wire, maybe a foot-ish. I don't wind them together over here. I just simply wrap them around one time and try and get them somewhat tight like that. And I like them to be as close together as possible. All the OCD, right? But either way. So you get the two ends together. Use this pair of pliers here to grab the two ends. If you've never done zip wire, you gotta squeeze hard as hell, push that in, and it basically locks these pliers in play. So from there, basically just pulling back and allowing the twist tie here to tighten all this together. And you can see now it's starting to bite into the grip. This is where you want to start being a little careful, because you will quickly and very easily break this wire. For a safety wire, it's not exactly very strong. So there you go. You can see how it's kind of bit in there. I like to leave maybe the length of that on there, and you'll be able to tell this is really sharp, and obviously you don't want to touch that, or nor do you want it to ruin your gloves. So you basically grab it, bend it, and then what we're gonna do is shove it with that bend inside that grip there so that it doesn't ruin our gloves. There we go. So now we have a nice tight safety wired grip that's not going to come off, and yeah, maybe that doesn't look cool to you guys, but it sure as hell freaking works. So I'll do it on the front and the back on both sides, regardless of throttle tube or clutch side. But that's how you do that. I won't waste any more time letting you guys see more of that. We'll go ahead and put the other side grip on, and this time we're going to use some kind of soap and water to help get it on, because that was a pain in the ass. Normally it's really easy to put on grips. I don't know why I just struggled pretty hard on that one. But that's good that it's a part of the video so that you can see that it doesn't always go exactly as planned, nor is it always that easy. But so far, now that I've got all this stuff on, I've got everything tightened down. I did the whole 10 millimeters, like I said, in each location. For here, I'm not planning on doing any more changes to the bike until I actually get out on the track, ride this thing, or at least on the streets, and go kind of see how I like it. Because I think there's going to be quite a bit of setup still left to do. And like I said, even if my setup is a good setup for me, it doesn't mean it's a good setup for you. So thanks for hanging out, guys. Sorry for the long video, and I'll see you on the next one.